I'm gonna double check and make sure that's muted. That shouldn't matter. Hey, I'm live. Good. Fantastic. Now, the other thing that I want to check and see if that is... Oh, no way. They already got approved. So I made these emotes, like right before stream, and got them uploaded in time for stream, but I didn't expect them to get approved so quickly. So we have a new Michael Peretti. I went with the not yellow Peretti. But I might change that. It's not obviously him, right? Oh, I can't see any of you all. I can't see what's going on. Let's pause that. Move the... We can just close this now, I think. That's good. And I don't need any of the other things here. That's all just until the end of stream. Okay, the emote approval phase has gotten quicker in the last year. Is your channel point icon the Phyrexian black mark? No. It does look like the Phyrexian black mark, and I am a Magic player, so I do get that reference. It's not though. It's the... Phi? Why, because I play Magic? Yes, I am also a Magic nerd. I just recently got back into Magic. That's funny. I haven't talked about Magic on my stream in probably like 5 or 6 years, because I kind of have been in a Magic playing lull, you might say. But a buddy of mine, he was talking about how we are very odd, but we are odd similarly. And he jokingly said, "You probably even play Magic." And I said, "I absolutely play Magic." I absolutely do. And so last Sunday, for the first time in 8 or 9 years, I played Magic with somebody, sitting at a real table with real Magic cards. Though some of what he was playing with were proxies, but I don't care. I like to play the game. Pre-launch is tonight for the new set. Oh, Strixhaven. There are going to be so many awesome birds. I've never wanted to build a bird deck so badly. Yes, Secrets of Strixhaven, yeah. And they haven't teased Niv Mizzet. Is that the name of the legendary dragon? They haven't teased Niv Mizzet yet in the Strixhaven set, but I'm gonna be surprised if we get to the end of this block and we don't see him. Am I the only leftist that doesn't play Magic? We'll have to convert you, Jane. That's part of the process. Didn't you know? You didn't get that memo? That's so funny. New emote, like I was saying with Peretti, I'm not quite where I want me to be. I don't want to lose Artemis. Oh, my cat moved. Lilith has been sitting here the whole time I was getting ready for stream. She must have just moved a few minutes ago. The other one is David Graeber, obviously, and that one's much more obviously them. That's the thing with the Parenti one that, and it's not there yet because I haven't used it enough. Well, I could do the thing. I know how to do this. It's not showing up on my OBS yet, so I do have to do it the other way. Excuse me. Yeah, this one's good. Right now, these two emotes are set for tier 2 and tier 3. Just because I don't really have any other emote slots available at the moment. I do have an animated emote slot available, but I don't really know how to do that. Like these emotes, like I said, I started working on emotes 40 minutes before stream and got them both finished before, like, in time. Hammering out an emote like this takes me just a matter of minutes. It's really not difficult. Zero clue on how to do an animated emote. But I'm interested, if anybody knows anybody that would be interested in doing an emote. I have the, oh, I can't do it there. Where is it? It's the notes. I really think that my, not to float my own boat, but I really like my notes emote, but it's not obviously a notes emote. That's Artemis, the channel mascot. Artemis is holding a pen and taking notes, or a pencil and taking notes, but it's not. You can't really tell, unless you know that that's what it is. It's not obviously that's what it is. So maybe a little bit more cartoonish one that's a little bit more obvious. And I'll work on the Peretti one too, because like I said, it doesn't, if you don't know it's Peretti, it doesn't quite look like Peretti. But anyway, let's see. Okay, good. Today I plan to get into a conversation about statism. We always have really good productive conversations here. I was really, what's the word? I was, after Wednesday's stream, I felt like it was a good stream, but I didn't feel like it was a remarkable stream. After the fact, after I had thought about it some, after I had mulled some of the thoughts over, it might be one of our best streams yet. So far as really getting into the depth of the conversation, really tearing into the materiality, but also the morality, but also the emotion that drives these things together. And it just, thank you all, everyone that was here, for helping me make that amazing stream. Oh, that's why none of my badges are showing up. I can... Oh. Okay. So it's, anyway, I don't know that we can follow that up, but I'm gonna try. I'm starting to get a little washed out. My whiteness is showing. Yeah, so today I really want to get into the state, and I believe that this is going to be kind of a long conversation. Probably will take us into next week, maybe Wednesday and Friday of next week. We'll be talking about states and statism still. But we'll see. Because there's, on one hand, there's not a whole lot. On the other hand, there's a whole world of nuance to unpack there. So we'll see what we can see. Oh, let me close this out too. Go ahead and save this project too. In case I decide to do something fun with that later. Oh shoot, I need to make sure. Hold on. I have student files open. Whoopsie. I just need to make sure that there is zero possibility that I am going to display confidential student information. Let me just make... I thought that everything was closed, but... I'm not even sure how that got open. No problem. Okay, thank you. Okay, but... student information has all been closed. Oh, YouTube chat. I didn't double check that we have YouTube. We don't. Hey, there we go. Now we do. Good. Just double check. Let me say hi over here. Look at that. Good. Good. I'm a pro streamer. I know how to do things. Okay, welcome back. Just watching the video we posted in Discord today. Yes. For a second, I was like, you didn't post a video in Discord today. But yes, Jane, today we will be watching the video that you posted in Discord, the Anarchs discussion on states. That's going to be a fantastic place to start. Absolutely. But before we jump into that, because I don't have any other note keeping or housekeeping, that's the word that I meant to say, to separate Windows user and work. You're right. You are right. And more than just right. I have assured that my institutions that I have done so, despite the fact that I haven't. So I am supposed to have those separate. Twitch messages not showing up in the overlay. They should be. Our Twitch. So yeah, you're right. You're right, Matt. I should do that. That would be the easier thing to do. Well, the difficulty that I have with doing that is I won't switch accounts. Well, and I don't know the extent to which I'm just making excuses, but I do have ADHD brain. And while I am doing this thing and I'm focused on this thing, usually 200 or 300 other things pop up that I also want to not forget about. So I'm like making notes, and I will pull up because I have two browsers windows that I use. One that has all school stuff and one that has all stream stuff, or my personal browsing stuff. And I just close that one when I'm doing school stuff, and then oh wait, this reminds me of this thing that I want to talk about on stream, then I pull up the other, and so I keep some of the stuff really separate, but having all of the stuff on two completely separate accounts or two separate desktops, it would be really difficult for me to multitask in the way that I like to multitask. Yeah, for me, it's not necessarily the risk to the employer. They can cope. Right, I'm not worried about them. It's more of my privacy from my employer. Right, that would also make sense. Well, and probably what I will do at some point is get a laptop and that laptop will be a dedicated machine that is always only all the school stuff. And that way I can take all of my school stuff off of my PC and then have the laptop. And because the thing that frustrates me when I'm trying to this is going to be such first world problems. But during the summer, I like to go to music festivals and I like to relax and unwind. And sometimes I like to be extremely not in the present with the aid of, different kinds of substances. And being able to completely detach is something that I very much enjoy and I very much crave. The way that I have my school semesters set up now is I always have some class that's always ongoing when I would like to be at some music festival or out camping or out losing my mind. And the thing that I am lacking is the peace of mind of being able to deal with an emergency situation right now. Right? That I can, okay, this is something that I need to do for my job. I can step away and take care of this so that I can now close that and go back to relaxing. Because last summer, every time I was out at a festival, something would come up, something would happen, and I wouldn't have a way I wouldn't have a way to deal with it. I wouldn't have a way to solve the problem. And now I just can't stop thinking about the problem. Now I want to go home because this is an important problem. It's time sensitive and I want to be able to deal with that. But, anyway, I need a laptop for sure. And doing a KVM switch could also work with 2 keyboards and mice, but the laptop would be a better solution for me. So I don't have, like I said, don't have any housekeeping that I want to talk about today. So we will be getting right into the Anarch video pretty much. But I do want to bring this one up again. Oh, you all can't see me because I haven't put myself back. There I am. I want to bring this one up again. Really kind of putting feelers out if you all wanted to go over this on stream, because I've brought it up on stream a few times. We've talked around the ideas, but we haven't really unpacked any of the ideas from here beyond just me telling you a little bit about it. So if this is something that you are all interested in actually talking about and doing a deep dive in, let me know. Because it was really great content, was really fantastic for me, but I don't think that we really need to for our overarching projects and directions that we're going. Yeah. Well, yes, I was going to do that regardless. That wasn't going to be today. This is what I really want to get into. And I haven't seen any of this. Usually I watch a good bit of videos before I just start to play them to make sure that the content's appropriate. But from this content creator, Anarch is someone that we, the community, we trust, we know that their information is going to be good. And even if we disagree with something, then that's kind of part of the point, is that we're going to stop and talk about it. In the off chance that there's some kind of disagreement, but there almost never really is. Anything with a dedicated graphics card and upgradable RAM would be great for streaming. NVIDIA graphics card for the encoders doesn't need to be fancy, just 3050 or bigger number. Okay. I don't know what the number 3050 is even in reference to. Is that the NVIDIA model number? That doesn't seem right. Is the model? Okay. Wow, they've gotten a lot further than I remember, because I used to, back in the day, I used to sell graphics cards. But that was, oh my God. That was in the early 2000s. It's been a minute. It's like 3 generations old. Okay. Ah, okay. And in it, I do. That's true. Because I bought a new computer recently, and it's not bad, but it's not upgradable, and it's not very good. It was a budget purchase. I knew that my PC was not just that my PC was having problems. It was crashing continually, and I still am not sure what the problem with that PC was. But I believe it has to do with the chipset and motherboard were just so old. They were old when I bought them secondhand in 2017, I think, or 2018 was when I bought that computer. So I bought this one recently. I think I paid like $240 for it, maybe. It was really not a lot, but it's got a good bit of RAM, a great processor, and it's doing okay. The problem that I have with Stream is bandwidth. My internet connection out here is absolute trash, so that's my biggest deal. 2 GPUs and 1 graphics card. Oh yeah, I remember that those back in the day. May need to wait on any builds. The prices of all things are pretentious. Right now is a good point. Good point, Eris. Right now is probably not a good time to start looking for replacing. But we'll see. Hey, the strait is open as of this morning, right? We've got the ceasefire going. All reports, everybody is saying that the strait is open and traffic should start flowing. So we'll see. We'll see. This is not to just regurgitate ideas, but I don't have any notes above and beyond what Struggle 4 was saying about the strait being open this morning. We'll see, right? We have every possibility to make a deal. Making a deal right now would be real fucking easy, right? But that doesn't mean that things are going to stay. Last week they announced the price drops. They're actually starting. Okay. Yeah, and that's, I'll keep, right now would be the time, maybe. So we'll keep that in mind. But let's get to the video. Right, good.
Hey everyone, Anarch here. Today's video will be focused upon a very important topic in leftist theory, namely, the role and nature of the state in the revolutionary process. It would be an understatement to say that this has been a point of contention for a variety of committed socialists. Indeed, it represents...
We'll get into the points of contention for sure. Not going to interrupt for long, but I'm just hoping I was going to pause and be like, well, I thought this was going to be on state in general, but they'll get to state in general, right? I'll just let them get to it.
The most significant early theoretical split in the left, one which has endured until this day. Over the course of this video, we will inspect why this is the case and why this division has not disappeared, despite a century of experiments, both with states and without. As we begin this analysis, I'd like to refer to a quote from the book The Bolshevik Myth, in which the anarchist Alexander Berkman tells the story of his deportation from America to the Soviet Union between the years of 1919 to 1922. Despite what you might assume, given his anarchist ideology, Berkman was willing to sideline his skepticism of the state in the revolutionary process. Indeed, upon his arrival, he wrote, "A feeling of solemnity, of awe overwhelmed me. Thus my pious old forefathers must have felt on first entering the Holy of Holies. A strong desire was upon me to kneel down and kiss the ground consecrated by the lifeblood of generations of suffering and martyrdom, consecrated anew by the revolutionists of my own day. Never before, not even at the first caress of freedom on that glorious May Day, 1906, after 14 years in a Pennsylvania prison, had I been stirred so profoundly. I longed to embrace humanity, to lay my heart at its feet, to give my life 1,000 times to the service of the social revolution." Shortly after, in fact, he recounts an event where he confronted a dissident Russian anarchist who was giving a speech to a crowd. "We anarchists," the dissident anarchist was saying, "are willing to work with the Bolsheviki if they will treat us right. But I warn you that we won't stand for suppression. If you attempt it, it will mean war between us." Berkman jumped on the platform. "Let not this great hour be debased by unworthy thoughts. From now on, we are all one. One in the sacred work of the revolution, one in its defense, one in our common aim for the freedom and welfare of the people. Socialists or anarchists, our theoretical differences are left behind. We are all revolutionists now, and shoulder to shoulder we'll stand together to fight and to work for the liberating revolution. Comrades, heroes of the great revolutionary struggles of Russia, in the name of the American deportees, I greet you. In their name, I say to you, we've come to learn, not to teach, to learn and to help." This?
Right. That's supposed to be the point, right? That we are working together to build a better tomorrow. And this is, don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because I imagine Anarch's going to cover it somewhat, but we can disagree. We can disagree and still work together. And that should be our goal, right? And the regulars here are familiar with where I'm already going with this. A diversity of viewpoints is actually the best way to ascertain real truth. By yourself, you cannot actually have access to any kinds of meaningful truths about the world. For the capital T truths in the world that you think are meaningful to actually have meaning, those ideas need to be contended with tangibly by other people. Otherwise, it's just a figment of your imagination. Otherwise, it's just some idea in your head. You don't have access to any kind of meaningful truth that doesn't involve others. That's where we find real truth, real meaning in the world, is by working these things out with others. And the world in which we live is constructed in such a way on purpose so as to make us all insecure, ontologically insecure. And this is a word I'm going to start using more. I used to use it a lot before, and I'll unpack this. We'll talk about it, ontological insecurity, a lot more in depth. But the insecurity is the point, so that people feel like they they can't be vulnerable. People feel like they can't ask questions. People feel like they can't admit when they don't know. When they can't admit when they don't have that, when they're anyways, the insecurity is part of the system, and we need to stop letting the way that the system is interfere with our ability to work together to do stuff. That some revolutionaries at some point argued about states and how those states ought to be organized, and this disagreement caused a massive rift in leftism, is still something that we are suffering from today. We are suffering today because people will not put their egos aside and accept that we should be working together towards a better tomorrow, even if I don't get to be the boss of exactly what that looks like. Because that's really all it is. When people get all butthurt and they stomp away, screw you guys, I'm going home, right? When this happens, it's because somebody is more concerned with their ego than they are with building a better tomorrow. That's it. Right? We can have disagreements about the state. We can have disagreements about organization. We can have disagreements about all of those nuances, and we should. Because when we are having those disagreements, we are going to make each other better. We are going to make our movement better. We are going to make us better by engaging with those ideas, so that we know we're not just blowing smoke up our own ass. So that we know that other people think that that's a good idea because they've tested it against other good ideas, right? That's what we want, is a diversity of tactics, a diversity of viewpoints coming together so that we can have the best of them and pick the best courses of actions in all of the situations. If we are looking to a vanguard, if we are looking to some kind of icon around which we are going to rally or coalesce, right? That inhibits our ability to actually respond to material conditions and material changes. When we are appealing to leaders, when we are appealing to dogma, when we are appealing to vanguards, we are setting ourselves up for failure, because the best tactic is always a diversity of tactics, which requires that we accept that we are going to work together with some people sometimes and not agree with them. The caveat that I'm sure Jane has been waiting, maybe it's already, okay, not yet. The caveat that we have to throw in here is we are not going to work with anyone or everyone, right? We don't work with racists or fascists or with transphobes. There's a whole laundry list of people that we understand, we know we don't want to work with them. We don't need to figure out how to retool our organizing to include, no, fuck them. No, fuck them. But other people who want to build a better tomorrow and care about a world without capitalism, a world without exploitation, a world without unjust hierarchies, socialist, communist, anarchist, come on, right? We can work together and disagree at the same time. That's actually good. Swim down is important. Can't do it unless we all move the same way, right? Statists and non-statists want completely different things, however. Okay, so that's something that we will have to work out, Jane. Statists and non-statists want completely different things. Right, 'cause we're going to get to that, but how differently? And what I mean is I'm not trying to put you on the spot, and I don't want you to think that you need to answer immediately, but like, how completely differently? Because when it comes to, I'm an anarchist, I want no state. But when it comes to the path that we need to get to there, we still have to go through what I think we have to go through socialism, which makes me a socialist right now. I'm not a socialist, I'm an anarchist. That's what I want. But I don't mind working together with people who are interested in building state powers, which are going to help give people access to the levers of society. I don't think that that's the right solution, and I don't think that that's the end goal. But I think that that's in a direction that I could work with, right? So when we say completely, how completely, right? Because there are different teloses there. Obviously, somebody who wants no state and somebody who is a statist, right? Those are going to be very different approaches. Very different ideas would be informing them, and how those individuals prefigure themselves will also be very different. But different enough? And that's kind of and Jane, really, that's the overarching question that we're trying to answer right now, and with this stream and probably the next few streams, is how do non-statists work together with statists? What is the limits of that ability for those groups of people to work together? That might be the way that we frame this. Hey, welcome in. That's yet a different Yeet 3342. Welcome in, Nova Riders. Good to see you. On a different one today. Caveat: in any form of intersectional anti-capitalism will work better than letting capitalism win while we're all divided. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. Sunbiker. Well, I mean, that's funny. Okay, good, but good, right? This is all fantastic. This is exactly the right kind of questions we're asking, exactly the right kind of nuance we're trying to push at. Right, this is fantastic. Let's get back to the video, and then think more about working together. Why didn't that work? Oh, maybe it did work. No, it doesn't look like it worked over there. Let me look on. I added some more of the things to Better TTV. Okay, so it did work. It just doesn't show up. It only shows up on Twitch. But Sag is one that I just added. Okay. Anyways, back to the video.
This was the attitude of many anarchists toward the Russian Revolution. It wasn't perfect, they might have imagined, but it was the best bet that leftism had at the time.
Look at all these slave
Berkman, a
masters
committed
posing on your
opponent,
dollar. Get it? Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Get it? Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Get it? Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Get it? Look at all these slave masters. Hey.
to the state, counseled his fellow anarchists to support the Bolsheviks. Kropotkin, too, always a vocal critic of the state, was heartened by the promise he saw there. The anarchists of the last wave of revolutionary acts suspended their skepticism in order to see if the flower of state socialism might bloom into liberation. And they can't be blamed for having withheld their skepticism in face of what appeared to be an exhilarating victory. Indeed, it must have seemed like the world revolution was just around the bend. However, unlike the leftists of 1917, we now have in hand the empirical outcomes of the state experiments of the 20th century. Thus, in the following series, I will argue for why we must reject a repetition of this historical cycle. First, I'll carry out a theoretical inspection of the state as an
Right, let that back up. But I'm pretty sure that I'm going to agree with Anarch in all of this. Right, and I wanted to just clarify again, right, because that I was looking at the title, right? What is the state? The state is counter-revolutionary. I agree with that. 100%. I believe that when we are working to build, and this is, well, maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Before I go setting it in any kind of absolute determinate limits, or let's just wait and let this go a little bit more.
Institution, and disentangle how the ideologies which cling to it have been corrupted so deeply. Then, in the following videos, I'll move on to inspect the historical record more closely, such that we can witness the degradation of these revolutionary projects in greater detail. The tasks we have ahead of us are far too important to avoid speaking the truth out of fears of sectarianism. It's a solemn duty that we have to the people of our societies to bring something far more than just a marginal improvement, something better than a new aesthetic for an old system. In order for this to happen, it depends upon our vocal opposition to the failed tactics of the past.
And I know I'm pausing a lot, but I think that really encapsulates how I feel about it. That when we are any kind of statism, however you dress it up, you know, you can if you've got a turd, you can sprinkle some glitter on it, you can put some sprinkles on it, you can put a star in it, still a turd, right? However you dress this thing up,
and all evidence that can be found leads the careful observer to only one conclusion. The state is counter-revolutionary. So, if we're going to have this discussion, it only seems appropriate that we should answer a very basic question. Namely, what is the state? Well, there's a very common definition, first defined by Max Weber, that the state is the human community that successfully claims the monopoly of the legitimate use of violence within a given territory.
this is my favorite to give to students when because I have as part of my application essay, there are 10 pre-approved topics that students can choose from. Usually it's abortion or euthanasia is an easy one that students like to pick. Animal rights, the generic environmentalism, the generic things that you would expect. But the final one that I have is political violence. And that's the topic, political violence. And it is left intentionally vague because a lot of times when students first pick up the idea of political violence, what they think about are riots and protests and instances of deviance that are met by state oppression. So when they first think about state violence, what they think about are the riots and the protests, right? And often students will begin writing their essay from a viewpoint of, well, riots are disruptive and protests need to be done in a certain way so that, but it usually doesn't stay that way. once they start reading and researching and looking into it, especially because when they submit their thesis statement to me, I'm going to give them feedback. And one of the feedbacks I'm going to give is, well, what are those people opposing? And are they morally right or wrong, right? Those things do actually matter. It's not just about stability. Society is supposed to be a reflection of us, right? And this is something that students can really understand when they are faced with this idea of a monopoly on violence. They go, wait a minute. Wait a minute. The state is just an apparatus for dealing all of the violence so that we can't do violence, right? And then they start to really ask some of the right questions. So this is really a great place to start, for sure. Yes, but not all. Homelessness, hunger, lack of medical care, all violence. Yes. Yeah, that is all violence. And the distinction there, if we could just take a brief moment, a brief aside, and draw attention to what liberalism is on the face of it. Well, no, fuck what it is on the face of it. What liberalism is systemically, because that's what I want to get to anyway. What liberalism is systemically is insisting that violence is necessary, but that individuals are not allowed to do violence, or are only allowed to do violence in a particular kind of way. That's what liberalism is that violence must exist, and that violence must exist only in a particular kind of way. And this homelessness, hunger, lack of medical care, those are all okay forms of harm. Because the whole thing, all of liberalism comes from Mills's harm principle, John Stuart Mills's harm principle. We've been over this over and over again. And the idea is that no state shall interfere with the rights or autonomy of any individual so long as that individual isn't doing direct harm to others. So I can't punch you in the face because I'll be doing direct harm to you. But you can starve me. You can deprive me of health care. You can charge me rent and expel me if I don't pay it, because those are indirect harms, and that's okay. Those harms are fine, actually, in a liberal mindset. And the wild thing is there is no moral justification. Ethics professor, there is no moral justification for making the difference that liberalism makes about harms and violence. It's arbitrary. The distinction is arbitrary and was cooked up by people who wanted to protect their own power and wanted to protect their own property. Why are my closed captions not working? Hello? Hello? Okay. We'll just reset our pubnub then. Not sure what happened there, but there you go. Got our closed captions back. Yes. Yeah, that's where I was going, Jane. Because I was done with my rant.
This definition is largely functional and is a very good way to disentangle complicated conversations, but it's insufficient if we're really going to develop a complete understanding of our goals, and if we wish to lay out what the abolition of the truly oppressive aspects of the state will even look like. Enrico Malatesta, however, gives a more expansive coverage. Anarchists, including this writer, have used the word state, and still do, to mean the sum total of the political, legislative, judiciary, military, and financial institutions through which the management of their own affairs, the control over their personal behavior, and the responsibility for their personal safety are taken away from the people and entrusted to others who, by usurpation or delegation, are vested with the powers to make the laws for everything and everybody, and to oblige the people to observe them, if need be, by the use of collective force. This definition includes almost every important aspect of the state, yet loses the territorial nature of Weber. Kropotkin, however, brings us full circle, synthesizing Malatesta and Weber. The state, he says, not only includes the existence of a power situated above society, but also of a territorial concentration, as well as the concentration in the hands of a few of many functions in the life of societies. A whole mechanism of legislation and of policing has to be developed in order to subject some classes to the domination of others. We've left out the quibbles of these two thinkers, in which they develop distinctions between state and government. Although useful, they'll prove unnecessary for our inspection. Nonetheless, when we combine these definitions, we can now see what aspects in particular that the anarchist objects to in the institution of the state. It's not only Weber's legitimate use of violence within a territory, which is objectionable, although that certainly comprises the core ultimatum for their paradigm. It's the fact that the state is a top-down schema of social enforcement, inherently predicated upon diminishing the direct control by the people, centralizing the judicial, military, and political functions of society into a body of privileged rulers. The very existence of such an entity is thus guaranteed to create a class structure in which the functionaries of the state and their collaborators operate above the people, transmuting the masses into subjects. This last aspect is particularly emphasized by Rudolf Rocker in his work Nationalism and Culture. Every power presupposes some form of human slavery, for the division of society into higher and lower classes is one of the first conditions of its existence. The separation of men into castes, orders, and classes occurring in every power structure corresponds to an inner necessity for the separation of the possessors of privilege from the people. And although Rocker illustrates this beautifully in his own work, I'll leave that reading to you. If the origin and toxicity of the state interests you, you'll find plenty of food for thought in both the works Nationalism and Culture by Rudolf Rocker and The State, Its Historic Role by Peter Kropotkin. Instead, I intend to use these foundations to reformulate an argument I made in another one of my videos, The Case Against Hierarchy. The argument goes as follows. The state is a small group of people vested with the unitary control over the functions of governance.
A few things that I wanted to mention, and I'll start with the small because it's just a quick caveat. I thought it was worth it to throw this out. It's not necessary for us to worry about how big we mean by small. Hopefully that makes sense. How large or small a group of people that we're concerned with when we are concerned with a small group of people. It is a bottleneck, right? That's the thing. We don't need to worry about the proportion or the percentage, or right. We just understand that what we have is a bottleneck of power, without making too much more distinction. Relative minority would be a fantastic way to say it. Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to mention, and this is a little thing. I'm going to go all the way to me for like just a second, but while we are going over the video, it would, I think, be kind of helpful to keep this distinction in that we didn't talk about. Let me go back. Hold on. Went to my face, and then I realized that I actually want to go back to the video. That this distinction here between these, oh, that's much further back than I thought. The distinction that these two make between state and government. Right. It's not important for this video and for understanding why state is not revolutionary. It is important because some of the things that we think about state might actually be better in a government category. And the thing that I would like you to think to keep in the back of your mind is that there are things that are not necessarily bad or wrong about the way that we organize governments or bureaucracy. Those are not necessarily bad and evil things in themselves. Or think about the way that we were talking about commodity on last Friday's stream, where it's the most free that you can be is if you are the sole master of all the things pertaining to you. But that's not reasonable or practical or nearly desirable, because you don't want to have to make all of your own shoes, all of your own clothes, pave all of your own roads everywhere that you go, right? You want to live in a world of others, work with others, and you want to enjoy the benefits of a society of others where people are taking care of some of those other things, and you are not going to be taking care of those things. And to some degree, you relinquish some of your freedom and autonomy to others when you expect that the people who are in charge of purifying water know what they're doing. And you are not going to go follow up and investigate the chemistry and do the tests yourself. And right, you have to give some of that up to somebody else. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? And that's what I'm trying to get at here is there are things that are good about the way that we organize, and none of those things are state. And these two are going to have different ways that they contrast, or different ways that they segregate the affairs of organizing the world or organizing society as distinct from the state. And none of that matters. The thing that I want to hammer in is we don't have to abandon all of the things. Right, we're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. That's not really a good analogy in this situation, because we're throwing out, raise it to the ground, right? But there are things that sometimes are mistakenly called the state that are not necessarily bad things. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. Actually gain freedom by allowing experts to do that. Yeah, right, Jane. And I think that's a good point too. Let's say you actually gain freedom by allowing experts to do the thing. Right. That is a It's better states of affairs, and it's a better way to be. It's better ontologically. I'm not satisfied with the framing, but I'm not sure how. And what I mean is, I think that you're right, Jane. I'm not satisfied with the phrasing, and I don't know why yet, but we'll probably work that out. But I do agree. Yes. Well, and let me fix the video too, because we went way back.
Supposes some form of human is one of the first conditions of its existence. The separation of men into castes, orders, and classes occurring in every power structure corresponds to an inner necessity for the separation of the possessors of privilege from the people. And although Rocker illustrates this beautifully in his own work, I'll leave that reading to you. If the origin and toxicity of the state interests you, you'll find plenty of food for thought in both the works Nationalism and Culture by Rudolf Rocker and The State, Its Historic Role by Peter Kropotkin. Instead, I intend to use these foundations to reformulate an argument I made in another one of my videos, The Case Against Hierarchy. The argument goes as follows. The state is a small group of people vested with the unitary control over the functions of governance and the legally legitimate power to coerce others to abide by that control. Regardless of the temporary existence of selfless leaders, self-interested people will exist within the state. The power of the state is what allows those people to act in their self-interest. Therefore, it's in the interest of all the people that operate the state to perpetuate the power of the state. With this in mind, each time the power of the state is threatened, those who operate the state will have a tendency to stymie that threat. But every power structure that exists is competition for the state. Thus, the state stands at odds with any structure which may threaten its control over society. The masses, however, have an inherent power in their numbers and in their primary function as the laborers that make society run. So, the state will always have an institutional tendency to view the masses as a threat to the unitary power of the state. And, therefore, the state will always seek to control and suppress the latent power of the masses, except when it serves the interests of the state. This formulation alone guarantees an antagonism between the people and the institution of the state, centralized, vesting control over the organs of coercion and violence, seeking to establish and maintain a set of class hierarchies which bolster its own power. Just starting from the simple assumptions that people sometimes act in their own self-interest, that the state is comprised of people, and that the state is vested with the power to coerce society, it's a guaranteed outcome that this affair of subjugation will take place over a long enough timeline. As Rocker said, every power presupposes some form of human slavery. The only conceivable counterargument that a benevolent leadership which does not act in their own self-interest may sit in the seats of power neglects a simple reality. All humans die eventually, and once those benevolent dictators die, the reins will be handed back over to a new group of human beings, turning the state on a long enough timeline into a game of Russian roulette with the future of the masses lying in the balance. It gets worse, however. It's not only that individuals in power often seek to act in their own self-interest, nor is it the inherent tendency of the state to create and perpetuate class structures by its nature. It's also the tendency of even well-intentioned human beings, given a particular tool, to see the application of that tool as the solution to all problems. This cognitive bias is sometimes called the law of the instrument, or Maslow's hammer. It's famously contained in the pithy adage that, to the hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And we shouldn't be shocked that this cognitive bias occurs enough to have earned such a reputation. Humans have an inherent desire to solve the problems that lie in front of them. And given a single tool to solve that problem, they'll have a tendency to attempt and discover every way that that particular tool could conceivably overcome that particular problem. Every challenge that arises is then reframed as a question of how it's a problem for the wielder, and mutated by this frame into something which the wielder of the tool perceives as solvable through their means.
So, the language that I use an awful lot to describe this is the faculties of our apprehension. And some of these are pretty static. Mathematics is a good example of a faculty of our apprehension that we collectively apprehend relatively similarly. There are very big differences in how we use the language of mathematics to understand the world from individual to individual, but we are usually all able to arrive at 2 + 2 = 4, right? And that's kind of the point. But there are lots of other more nuanced faculties of our apprehension. And this, I want to throw in the ideas that we were talking about of confirmation bias, and the way that we interact with the world sets us up for a relationship to where if this thing hasn't killed me yet, it must be good. Right, and this is why people adopt religions. This is why people adopt different kinds of fetishizations. Even if they don't understand the things that are in the world, they are able to take that and use it, make it a part of themselves in a way that they are able to use that thing to navigate the world meaningfully, whether it actually corresponds with any truth to that thing in the world, right? The radio example is the one that I give. Whether or not people know how to make or how radios work, everyone knows how to make a radio work, right? We have this understanding. We don't understand the thing in the world, but we can make that a thing that we can help us use to navigate the world. But most of the organization of the relationships in our lives, most of the organization of the relationships in our lives are the product of imperialism, capitalism, colonialism, patriarchy, right? The way that we view our parents, the way that we think about drivers who have to drive and navigate through a city versus public transportation, how we think of these things is not up to us. We didn't invent these things, discover these things. We haven't worked out our relationships to these things. They have all been given to us. So when Anarch is talking about using a tool in a particular way, right? All of the faculties of your apprehension have all, for your entire life, have all been conditioned by capitalism and by hierarchical structures. These are part of how you apprehend the world. This is why decolonial prefiguration is what we are doing, is because how we understand the world is indivorceable from the things that we want to change about the world. Right? So just those are some of the ideas that maybe are going to help not muddy the water with regard to what Anarch is talking about.
Such a situation is even more perverse in light of the fact that the state's primary tools are coercion and the manufacture of consent. Within its very nature, it is thus a paternalistic and chauvinistic entity, bound to view all those who are subject to its will as unruly when they disobey, and useful only when they abide. It's an entity in a perpetual process of...
Also, the more that I've been thinking about it, Jane, it is the right framing. It's just a different way of thinking about freedom than I'm accustomed to. So your framing actually, when you said I'd say you'd actually gain freedom by allowing the experts to do their thing, I thought that I had an issue with the phrasing, but the more that I think about it, I really don't. There is a caveat to be made there, or some unpacking. In that, I don't even know. It can't be blind trust. And I don't know how better to express this idea. It cannot be the case that we accept that experts know the expert thing and we are just, and that's not at all what you meant, right? But there's the problem that I had has to do with gaining freedom by turning over responsibility to somebody else, which feels wrong. But it's not at all. We do this all the time, every day. When you go to the doctor and that doctor is going to cure your ailments, right? If you sit there and argue with the doctor about what they're trying to tell you, that's not very productive. That's not very helpful, right? You should go to a credible doctor that has the proper certifications, and you should trust the expert. And you are more free, and that's the thing that helped me understand. This is Aristotle even talked about this kind of concept of you can't know all of the things, and sometimes you have to appeal to the experts, and you can't have access to the information that the expert has, and you don't have access to the information that would be needed to critique the expert or their expertise. Right? So there is a kind of freedom in surrender. But it's not an uncritical surrender, and it's not for the sake of, well, that's a person in a position of authority, or, right, and again, that's not what you were trying to say, but there is a little bit more to unpack with it, but your phrasing is on point. Perfect, actually. We allow nuclear plant experts to enact their expertise, then we have more time and energy to enact our will. That's it. Yes, when we let them do their expert thing, it gives us more time and freedom to do our thing. It's right, exactly. We can divert our affairs how we would like to divert our affairs, rather than having to learn about nuclear or water treatment or whatever the doctor's trying to tell me. Yes, exactly. That is exactly.
Moral decline, a warden eternally destined to betray its charge. Left to its own devices over a long enough time, it can only be guaranteed to represent its own interests and the joint interests of its most powerful collaborators, not the exploited. The very act of centralizing power is thus an act of violence against the workers. So long as the state is allowed to exist, worker emancipation is impossible, in the same way that the class antagonisms of capitalism can't be eliminated while the means of production are controlled by the capitalists. Class abolition can then only ever hope to succeed if it corresponds to an abolition of centralized power. Such a statement is not a preference. It's a foundational requirement for the next phase of human development. And all attempts to make the state into a vehicle for liberation are misguided negotiations with a potent counter-revolutionary force.
Well, I don't disagree. I almost think that Anarch doesn't go far enough. It's categorically destined to fail. Must necessarily, categorically destined to fail. Unavoidably. That's what the necessary, anyway.
So, if all of this is true, why did leftists ever convince themselves that it could be otherwise? Well, we'll now inspect what theoretical and rhetorical aspects of leftist ideology led to the rot in the authoritarian foundations, so that we might better understand what created their repeated failures in a practical context. First, lying at the center of the authoritarian left conceptualization is the notion that any socialist project managed by the people is too weak and too aimless to defend itself from sabotage, and that instead of the people governing themselves in the interim, the state will need to rapidly centralize power, then wield that power benevolently in the interests of the masses.
A thesis antithetical to the idea of a diversity of tactics, that we are stronger when we have differing opinions and differing viewpoints that come together to help us solve our problems. Could not be more dialectically opposed.
This particular affair, it must be said, is not strictly contained anywhere within Marxist literature. In fact, Marx said something quite contrary at the First International, namely that the emancipation of the working classes must be conquered by the working classes themselves. That the struggle for the emancipation of the working classes means not a struggle for class privileges and monopolies, but for equal rights and duties, and the abolition of all class rule. However, some of Marx's rhetorical choices and early theoretical emphasis left the notion of what should be done and by what practice struggle should take place sufficiently vague, making the threat of co-option inevitable. The most pertinent of these rhetorical choices was that Marx called for a stage in which there would be a dictatorship of the proletariat. But Marx almost certainly did not mean that a centralized bureaucracy with complete control should domineer the workers and the previous bourgeois alike. Although it's true that he advocated centralization even as early as 1848 in the Communist Manifesto, by 1891 in his critique of the Gotha program, Marx was brutally criticizing the German socialists for their belief that socialism could be achieved through a paternalistic state, saying, "Free state, what is this?" It is by no means the aim of the workers, who have got rid of the narrow mentality of humble subjects, to set the state free. Freedom consists in converting the state from an organ superimposed upon society into one completely subordinate to it. And today, too, the forms of state are more free or less free to the extent that they restrict the freedom of the state. We can see by this that the notion that worker control meant centralized state control was certainly not a view held by the end of Marx's life. Indeed, the only state that Marx could see as consistent with worker control was one completely subordinated to the direct will of the workers. In fact, in Critique of the Gotha program, he excoriated the German Social Democrats for the notion that they should even presume to educate the masses. Government and church should rather be equally excluded from any influence on the school. The state has need, on the contrary, of a very stern education by the people.
Just want to think about this for a second. I'm not sure I have anything to say. I'm just trying to process this quote while I'm mulling over some of the stuff that we were talking about on Wednesday, and when we were talking about religion and spirituality and the deficiencies of the left to provide some kind of robust spirituality or narrative or something that's above and beyond just the material analysis of our basic needs, right? And again, I'm not sure I have anything to say. I just wanted to take a moment and process. So thank you all. And if at any point in time you all would like me to pause the video so you can marinate on some of the ideas, then feel free to let me know.
So, where did the authoritarian tendency arise if not from Marx? Well, upon inspection of the historical record, the truest forerunner to the authoritarian ideology appears to be an individual named Louis-Auguste Blanqui. Blanqui, an early French socialist revolutionary, did not believe that the proletarian were up to the task of revolution on their own. Instead, Blanqui conceived of the need of a small group of revolutionary professionals who would form a vanguard party and then lead the workers in a coup against the state, proceeding to suppress the previous ruling class until a time would come that a transition to socialism could take place. Blanqui did not attempt to conceive of the socialist future, nor when, how, and where the transition from vanguard rule to worker control might take place. It was far more important that the previous ruling class was defeated at all costs. This is not the last we'll hear of such a viewpoint.
Right, but as we've talked about, if we do away with the current ruling class, if we abolish the current system, but we haven't built any power structures, if we haven't organized any flat organizing, if we haven't taken part in the prefigurative process, we are exchanging one bourgeoisie system for another bourgeoisie system. We are exchanging one violent state alienated from the people for another violent state alienated from the people. We have to change the material conditions. We have to change the people. We have to change ourselves, right? These things have to be a part of the revolutionary process. There is nothing that a small group of vanguard revolutionaries can do to achieve revolution. Period. There is nothing that a small vanguard of revolutionaries can do to achieve revolution. All they can achieve is destabilizing the current power structures, and if they haven't changed the material conditions, those power structures rearrange themselves just like they were, with new people in charge. We just have a new bourgeoisie, a different face. Same monster. Zoran changed trash pickup from black trash bags on the curb to trash cans. Oh, wow. Wow. That's awesome. The more I hear about this guy, the more I think he's all right. Right? Don't like politicians. Don't have heroes, because they will let you down. And, so quick aside. Good bring up, Matt, because I've been wanting to have this aside anyway. And this is a pretty relevant point to bring this up. I have heard that in the wake of Zoran Bandami's success, that there are a lot of other democratic socialists that are interested in running for office, and many have already begun running for office. I mentioned Transgirl was running in Oregon, and there's another streamer that they were talking to this morning that I just recently followed, so I'm sorry I don't remember them. But they're also running, and I am somewhat hopeful, right? Little hopeful, that might produce something worthwhile. I don't think electoral politics is going to stop our steady descent into fascism. Period. Using a lot of periods today. I just, historically, maybe somebody can help me out here. Historically, when has electoralism stopped a steady descent into fascism? I'll take any historical example. One. And that doesn't mean that it's not possible, right? We don't want to make the mistake of induction, of inductive reasoning, teleological reasoning, and assume simply because something hasn't worked in the past that it cannot work. However, I don't think so. I would love to be pleasantly surprised. I would love to see 20% of local governments. I would love to see 20% of local governing bodies to all of the sudden be represented by democratic socialists. Sure, I believe that would produce slightly better material conditions for where we are. Is that revolution? No. Is that going to help us overcome capitalism? No. It's not. It's not. It's not. It's not gonna do those things. It might help make people's immediate material conditions better in some places, in some situations. And that's not nothing, but that's not revolution, and that's not anti-capitalist, that's not anti-establishment, that's not anti-imperialism. And that's the thing, and I don't want to rehash the same old thing with social democrats and democratic socialism, but at the end of the day, materially, these two options are really the same thing. It's entrenching the capitalist empire that we have. And I unavoidably, I can't help but see it that way. Yes, also, and I completely agree with that too, Matt. Skeptical of him, but happy that he's proving his chops. 100%. Hope lies outside of the system, not within it. That. Jane and I are on the same page with this. Yes, hope lies in us. Not in Zoran Mondami, not in democratic socialists being elected into office. I think that's a false hope. Right? And that's good. And I'm glad that you said that too, Jane, because I was saying I was a little hopeful, right? And let me be clear about that. Like I'm encouraged, and there's a little bit of optimism there, but it gives me hope that some people are out there doing something. Not hope for a revolution, not hope for a solution, not, because hope lies outside of the system. 100. Plus, you can weaken the system from within. I don't know. That's anybody seen SLC Punk? I'm a punk rock kid. I grew up listening to punk rock music, going to punk rock shows, and it's okay. It's actually a pretty good movie. It's got lots of problems, and it's very lib. And I don't want to spoil too much, but at the end, that's the rebellious anarchist punk rock kid decides that the best way for them to rebel against the system was by trying a Trojan horse approach. And I as much as I enjoyed the movie as a youth, and as much as I still think it's a decent movie to watch, it's fucking wrong. That the movie has lots of problems. And that's the biggest one. The most glaring one is that when a good example, I think, is environmental law. That the people who enter law school and into the legal system for the purpose of fighting for environmental rights, I think that they're heroes, right? They're doing their best. But that comes with a very important caveat that I believe what they're actually doing is entrenching the system rather than actually working against the system. And they're, well, instead of taking that approach, let's just go with the Angela Davis approach, right? In police reform and prison reform, the only things that we have accomplished are getting capitalist companies to get better at hiding their abuse. That's what all of our railing against the prisons are unjust and that we need to, right, all of the things that we have done so far with regard to the prison system has only entrenched the prison system and made it more difficult for us to do anything about it. And this is the civil rights argument that Afro-pessimists make, right? We got a lot of groundbreaking legislation passed, right? And these legal precedents that are celebrated as cultural and racial victories. But the end result is we have a legal system that is now colorblind, is specifically designed not to be able to address race-based grievances. As a result of the civil rights movement and the legislation that has been passed, right, it makes the courts colorblind. And that's just, I can't help but think that this is also more of the same. Any way that we, yeah. Thank you, Jane. I was just thinking it's about time for a reminder. Entryism will make any effort for revolution weaken. Entryism. I may have learned a new word today. A political tactic where members of a group join a larger established organization to covertly or overtly change its policies, promote their own ideology, or take over leadership. Yes. Yes. Okay. I did learn a new word. That's a really good word. That I hadn't been familiar with. Huh. Yeah, absolutely. And this is a good time to get back to the video.
Although its next adherents will not call themselves Blanquists. With these foundations in place, we can now turn our inspection to the next and perhaps most significant development in the authoritarian leftist ideology, calling itself Marxist-Leninism. This ideology, basing itself on the thought of Vladimir Lenin, would animate a great many revolutionary struggles and ideological offshoots to come. However, we don't have sufficient time to inspect all of those. Instead, we'll look at the most significant of these offshoots, Marxist-Leninist Maoism, in part 3 of this video series. For now, let's start at the beginning. This quote from Lenin's work, What is to be Done, is quite instructive of the attitude he takes toward revolutionary organization. Class political consciousness can be brought to the workers only from without. That is, only from outside the economic struggle, from outside the sphere of relations between the workers and the employers. Leninism is predicated on a fundamental lack of faith in the workers to organize themselves and to arrive upon a coherent conception of their class position without a party to lead them.
So, quick caveat here about why Lenin would believe that. For those of you who are not familiar with Lenin's rise to quote-unquote power, there was the Russian Revolution, which actually wasn't any kind of revolution whatsoever. It's really a misnomer, because it was simply an abdication. Nicholas II stepped down. There was no violence, there was no coup, there was no uprising of the people. That Nicholas II was a continual fuck-up. And after a long lifetime of doing nothing but screwing up and screwing up and screwing up and screwing up, his brother finally convinced him to abdicate. And in the abdication of the Tsar, there was a massive power vacuum, because Russia had always, or for the last 8, I think, generations, had been ruled by the Romanov family. So, and it was an absolutist rule where the Tsar did all the things, organized all the things, orchestrated all the things, made all the decisions. Thank you for the follow. Welcome in. And nobody else did anything. There were a few administrators, and there were a few, what are they called? Ministers of business, right? After Nicholas II abdicated, all of the rich people, all of the advisors, and all of the business, whatever I just called it, just said, they all left. They all fled Russia. And so the 12 people who had been running everything in the entire government left. And nobody else knew how to do anything. And people were literally just starving in the streets of the cities. And Lenin had to organize people out in the country to grow food and get them to grow a surplus, and then organize people in the city that had trucks to come out and get the grain. And then he had to organize the bakers and the millers and get them to work together to be able to start bread lines, right? And it really was this kind of it was 8 years. For 8 years, people were just starving. No government, no organization, nobody had any solutions. And all Lenin did was get people to figure out that they had to have conversations with each other about the things that the problems that and figure out with each other how to solve those problems. And that's all Lenin did. His rise to power was just getting people to figure out how to have conversations with each other so they can work out their problems. And so I can kind of understand why, because for 8 years, people were just okay with starving I mean, not really, like literally, I'm kind of being cheeky with that. But I mean, for 8 years, nothing happened. No economic development, no business, nobody was growing crops except for to feed themselves. Nobody was baking any bread. Nobody was doing anything, right? For 8 years, people were just, hey, Tenekoe, welcome in, Kiyamatara. I hope you're having a great day. So Lenin's perspective isn't naive. It isn't uninformed or unintelligent or unbased in material conditions, because it was based in his literal experience with literal material conditions. And this is the part of Lenin that Marxist Leninist Maoists don't ever seem to get, is that Lenin says there is no one way to do this. You have to figure it out. Don't follow my plan because my plan can't work for you in some other city or some other nation. It can't, because you have different material conditions. Don't follow me, right? But anyway.
To Lenin, the vanguard, occupied by enlightened socialist thinkers, was a representative body of proletarian class consciousness. Thus, it was the job of the Revolutionary Party to tutor the masses on their liberation from without. Wherein the workers lacked such a guiding hand, Lenin took a dim view of their mass potential, believing that the highest state that they could achieve on their own was what he called trade union consciousness. That is to say, the ability to band together into trade unions. Such a conception, of course, neglects the fact that trade unionism was a movement with its own adherents and thinkers, developed and pioneered forth by other revolutionaries. A movement, in fact, which would be far more responsible for the radical and transformative elements of the Russian Revolution than the Bolsheviks. But in Lenin's mind, the masses had to develop past this trade union consciousness to succeed in revolutionary activity.
And there you go. There's the failure. The people contradicting some of what I just said, but different sources for the different for the Russian Revolution are going to have different accounts. So I will throw that caveat out there. But here you go. If the people are doing it, don't interfere with the people who are doing it. In this, one of the things that we have talked about before, if you see comrades who are out there trying to do direct action to make the world a better place, don't fuck with them. Don't naysay them and critique them, and if people are out there doing things to make the material world a better place with direct action, let them do that. Right? That's what you do.
And in order for them to develop in the way he wanted, they would have to submit to vanguard rule. In 1904, Rosa Luxemburg, after having read Lenin's One Step Forward, Two Steps Back, wrote a response called Organizational Questions of the Russian Social Democracy to criticize this attitude. In it, she said, "The two principles on which Lenin's centralism rest are precisely these. 1. The blind subordination, in the smallest detail, of all party organs to the party center, which alone thinks, guides, and decides for all. And 2. The rigorous separation of the organized nucleus of revolutionaries from its social revolutionary surroundings. Such centralism is a mechanical transposition of the organizational principles of Blanchism onto the mass movement of the socialist working class." From this, we can see that the connection of Lenin's thought to Blanqui is not something I've just made up. Lenin was accused of having advocated Blanchism so often, he even saw fit to mount defenses against the accusation. But his only defense was that he was not a Blanquist because his vanguard would organize the masses to achieve an absolute control, unlike Blanqui, whose vanguard planned the coup alone until the last moment. Ultimately, however, what has to be recognized is that Lenin's conception of the party was not really so much a body representing proletarian consciousness, but a body demanding submission of the proletarian to vanguard consciousness.
There's something else that I think might clue into this, and I don't like making the psychological suppositions in general, right? So I'm gonna there's a lot of salt to take with this, because it will be I'm speculating about other people's psychological states, but it seems to me like, well, actually, I'll go back to this. It seems to me like this kind of vanguardism appeals to people who want to be in charge, who want to be the deciders, who want to get others to submit to their will. Well, and there's I'm so close. Because it feels good to feel like you're doing the right thing. It feels good to be right. And that's what MLM is. It is a prescribed solution that you can learn, and if you learn the prescribed thing, then you have the right and authority, according to MLMs, to tell other people how to be revolutionary. And it seems to me like that might be a large part of the appeal, that people get to read some theory and then be the boss, right? Without having to do the direct action, without having to organize, without having to figure out what the people are doing or what the people need or what the material conditions are. They don't have to do any of that work. All they have to do is read the theory and then regurgitate the theory. and they think that they deserve to be in charge because they know the things. Right? And again, this is psychological speculation about other people's states of affairs. But it seems to me like that would be the large appeal to it, that people get to feel good, they get to feel superior, they get to feel elitist, they get to feel like they've got all the answers, right? And that it feels good. And especially if you're in a group of other people who are just, in an echo chamber that's reifying that idea, that attitude. We are the chosen ones. We are the saviors. We are the vanguard. And, right, they get to be on the winning team. And it feels like a sports ball win in the same kind of empty way, right? That they're not actually doing any of the winning. They're just on a team and waving their banner on the, and it's the uniform. This is the leftist uniform. If what you are doing to call yourself a leftist is knowing the theory so you get to tell other people what to do, you're wearing a fucking uniform. Right? You are wearing a costume. Take it off, you imposter. Yeah, it is anti-socialist in all of the ways that socialism is supposed to be liberatory. It is antithetical to all of those. Absolutely, Jane. 100%. Self-defeatingly. And it seems to me like it's obvious. It should be anyway. What do I know?
This is what Luxemburg meant when she mentioned how Lenin's centralism represented a separation of the organized nucleus of revolutionaries from its social revolutionary surroundings. Indeed, Lenin seemed to view the people as having a natural desire to submit. Luxemburg continues, "The authentic proletarian," Lenin suggests, finds by reason of his class instinct a kind of voluptuous pleasure in abandoning himself to the clutch of firm leadership and pitiless discipline. The centralizing tendency of Lenin, far be it from any conception of accountability to the revolutionary masses, was instead a way of configuring machine-like obedience among the workers. In fact, it would not even seem that Lenin viewed alienation of labor as something to be dismantled. Lenin seems to demonstrate again that his conception of socialist organization is quite mechanistic. The discipline Lenin has in mind is being implanted in the working class not only by the factory, but also by the military and the existing state bureaucracy, by the entire mechanism of the centralized bourgeois state. There is something perverse in this conception, wherein Lenin does not seem to want to change the relations of the workers to the means of production, but instead to simply refocus proletarian obedience to the capitalists with proletarian obedience to vanguard authority. Luxemburg, so disturbed by Lenin's ideas, would say, Nothing will more surely enslave a young labor movement to an intellectual elite hungry for power than this bureaucratic straitjacket, which will immobilize the movement and turn it into an automaton manipulated by a central committee. And she was not the only one to have foreseen disaster based on Lenin's words. Trotsky himself, before the February Revolution ever took place, saw in Lenin's expedient ideology the risk for what he called substitutionism. Said simply, Trotsky was worried that in Leninism, the organization of the party substitutes itself for the party as a whole. Then the Central Committee substitutes itself for the organization. And finally, the dictator substitutes himself for the Central Committee.
I haven't read any very much Trotsky. I've heard that some of it's pretty good, and that seems pretty on point to me.
Such an arrangement did indeed take place, and justified itself by Leninist logic that, since the party is the proletarian consciousness, then when the party forms a state dictatorship, it is a dictatorship of the proletariat. The practical results of such sophistry would be far from trivial. It's a tragic irony that Trotsky himself, once in power in that very same substitutionist party, only a few years after the revolution, would be the one to vocalize its attitude so clearly. The party is obliged to maintain its dictatorship, regardless of temporary vacillations, even in the working class. The dictatorship does not base itself at every given moment on the formal principle of a workers' democracy.
But maybe it should? Just,
I think it should be quite clear that none of this represents a development of Marx. Quite the opposite. These ideas represent a drastic break with Marx's theory. Whereas Marx believed that any power representing the workers must be completely subordinated to the workers, Lenin perceived that the workers had to be completely subordinated to the party. Whereas Marx thought that the revolutionary state had to be educated by the masses, Lenin thought that the masses should be educated by the state. Further, because Lenin astutely avoided a coherent understanding of anarchism, his ideology was then destined to fall victim to all of the problems we laid out at the beginning of this video. Leninism does not eliminate the inherent antagonisms between the state and the workers. It exaggerates them. Leninism not only views domination as a useful tool, it can only conceive of domination as a tool. For this reason, even projects that would come later, which sought to temper the bureaucracy seen in Leninism while maintaining vanguard ideology, would find out all too late what kind of contradictory thing they had incubated in their revolutionary projects. Lenin's ideology would carry forth as a sort of Blancist sickness, passed on by force in some occasions and by willing recipients in others, but in all occasions leading to an eventual abolition of socialism, as all centralist attempts are invariably doomed to do. Even after all of this analysis, however, I don't expect you to take what I've said for granted. After all, to exist only within the realm of ideas is not sufficient if we're going to build a revolutionary future. That's why, in the next two parts of this series, I'm going to focus on a coverage of the two preeminent statist experiments, the USSR and Maoist China. What I'll demonstrate is that in both, though these two projects had very different ideological premises to their leadership, where there existed some possibility for socialism, it was destined to be destroyed by a state-driven counter-revolution. And the workers, having allowed such an entity the excuse to domineer them, would eventually find nothing left of their socialist aspirations therein. Finally, In Part 4, we'll return to our theoretical considerations and explain how the modern left has come to excuse these failures, demonstrating the rhetorical emptiness of their appeals and offering a countervailing narrative that will help us understand how we might avoid the same pitfalls in the next revolutionary wave. Before we finish our video for today, however, I would like to return to Alexander Berkman's diary. Although initially he sidelined his principles out of an almost religious awe at the potential for liberation in 1919, by 1922 his tone had changed considerably. These were the last words he recorded before returning to America. Gray are the passing days. One by one, the embers of hope have died out. Terror and despotism have crushed the life born in October. The slogans of the revolution are forsworn, its ideals stifled in the blood of the people. The breath of yesterday is dooming millions to death. The shadow of today hangs like a black pall over the country. Dictatorship is trampling the masses underfoot. The revolution is dead. Its spirit cries in the wilderness. High time the truth about the Bolsheviki were told. The whited sepulchre must be unmasked, the clay feet of the fetish beguiling the international proletariat to fatal will-o'-the-wisps exposed. The Bolshevik myth must be destroyed. I have decided to leave Russia. Soon, we shall see what events led Berkman to this change of heart. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you want to help spread the work I'm doing here...
Fantastic. Fantastic video. Drop that in chat. Go ahead and put it over here on YouTube too, because why not? Yeah, excellent. I see that Kaiwatara put a whole bunch of stuff in chat, but I really need to use the restroom really fast, so I'm gonna put a song on so that you all can rock out to a song while I'm using the restroom, because I have got to go. Let's go with, I've got enough time, or this will be enough time, I hope. Yeah, that should be right. Good. All right, so I'll come back, Kaimatara. Don't go anywhere. I'll come back and read all your stuff in just a minute, but I need to go use the restroom. I'll be right back.
Not war, just peace, forever, forever, forever. Decirle al pueblo de Estados Unidos, no a la guerra. No queremos una guerra en el Caribe ni en Sudamérica. No, not war, just peace. No a la guerra loca. No crazy, no crazy war, no. ¿Cómo se dice en inglés? Please, please, please. Yes, peace. Listen to me. Yes, peace. Peace forever. Peace forever. Peace forever. Esto se llama lenguaje tarzaneado. Tipo Tarzán sería sí, paz, sí, paz, sí, paz por siempre. Sí, paz, 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 sí, paz, 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 sí, paz, 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 sí, paz, 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 paz. Not war, just peace, the people United States, de parte de the people Bolivarian Republic. I do one, I
Almost enough time, but close. Close enough anyway. Oh, good. Now I feel better. Okay, good. My article of universalism causing the withering away of the proletariat, as the proletariat shows precisely why socialism cannot be a party affair. As established at the beginning, the contrast to hierarchy is equality. So naturally, the left would be on the side of equality, or should be, right? Equality in this sense isn't about literally making everyone equal. As informal parity, it's a disruptive principle, a force that challenges the hierarchy itself, a disruptive principle. To elaborate, I remember earlier when I talked about parts having no part. Relegated to specific spheres under a hierarchy. When the revolutionary proletariat claims to represent everyone equally, not just workers, it claims universality. Yes, this is a point that you've made previously. When the revolutionary proletariat claims to represent everyone equally, not just the workers, the international, or it claims universality. But by claiming universality, it ceases to be a normal, stable class, because a stable class is this defined by its specific role. When the proletariat acts in this way, it's already different from itself. It is both a species part, a specific part, and a universal force. Because of this, identity as a class dissolves. Much like a sugar cube in tea, the more it spreads, the more it dissolves its original shape. It ceases to be confined both in functionality and form, in function and form. Importantly, it's not enough for the proletariat to rhetorically claim to represent everyone. It must materially do so. Right. The universality of the proletariat only becomes real when production and disruption themselves are organized by universal principles, from each according to ability to each according to need. Right. And this is a lot of good points. It's very much speaking to how, any kind of vanguardism, any kind of partyism is self-defeating. Is that the way that I want to think about this? Because, I mean, the Democratic Party, I think, is a perfect I think that a lot of leftists who might not understand what you're trying to get at, Kaimatara, would understand if we think about this in the way that the Democratic Party is supposed to be some kind of opposition against, or supposed to be some kind of party around which we can we can accomplish things, because we can't. And it has proven to always have been a project that was all just smoke and mirrors. And that's kind of the reality of American politics. For those of you who have taken civics classes, you are very aware of this long tradition, this rich history that we have of how the parties came to be, and they're contending back and forth. And it was always a system of privileged white men constructing a system that they knew could not work against the privilege of those white men. Right? It was built that way on purpose. So all of the back and forth, all of the identity politics associated with members of Republicans and Democrats, and then they switched places, and now it's different people who are racist, and they're just calling themselves by a different name. It was always the same thing. From the very beginning, it was intended to not ever be anything to give any of us any modicum of freedom or control or political participation. It's all just smoke and mirrors from the beginning. It was all just a facade from the beginning, and it can't not be. Because at the end of the day, power, there's a part of this video that I want to go back and take another look at too. Power always, not this video. Power maintains its existence so long as it protects and insulates itself. That's the most important. I'm back. That's the most important feature of power. It must necessarily be in the system that in the way that we have things organized. For power to be power, that power must be directed at maintaining, protecting, and insulating itself. Must necessarily. In which case, anything in this current system which has power doesn't care about you or your will or your machinations or what you're doing at all. Cannot, because if it did, it would cease to do the thing that power must do to be power. And that is to be concerned with maintaining, protecting, and insulating itself. That's what power does. Always, necessarily, in every form. And this is, this got me thinking. I wanted to go back and revisit this idea of power presupposes some form of human slavery. That any kind, yes, parties necessarily shrink rather than expand. But here you've got the solution. The universality of the proletariat only becomes real when production and distribution themselves are organized by universal principles. And of course, there's a whole lot more, right? And that's a whole lot more to say, a whole lot more to unpack about that. Because any form of power, and this is one of the things that I'm having trouble with. It's because we haven't had a deep enough discussion yet about power. That's going to be one of the other things, but we'll do that after state. We've got a lot of state stuff to work through first. But then the next natural thing, actually, after we distinguish characteristics of state as apart from characteristics of just organizing society in a way that makes sense, right? Those two things are not necessarily the same, and we need to figure out how to divorce those, not just in theory, but in practicality, in the materiality, and in the praxis. Man, I got distracted and went a different direction than I thought. Right, so back to one of the other, so the thing that I'm always talking about is building local power structures that can give people little pockets of real freedom. Those powers would also have to be the kinds of powers that protect and insulate themselves. Necessary for power to be power, that power must protect and insulate itself. So even when I'm talking about little local pockets, you know, where we are feeding people, housing people, finding ways to provide health care, and working towards LandBack, hopefully, right? Those are all part of what we should be doing in local pockets so that we can create little power structures, flat power structures that we have control over. And herein lies the difference, right? When we are when something okay. So if the essential characteristics of a party can be abstracted from the people, we already have a problem. And so not to push back too hard on one of the last things that you said is the universality of the proletariat only becomes real when production and distribution themselves are organized by universal principles. A lot more needs to be said there, because when we are talking about guided by universal principles, we have to be, and I'm not explaining anything to you, you know this, I'm sure. We have to make sure that we are avoiding locking ourselves into dogma. We do want to appeal to some kinds of universal principles, sure, but we also need to be, because that sounds very close to the same kind of language that an MLM would use. Look, I've got the solution. All you have to do is follow my prescription, and I know that that's not what you're doing, but some of the language sounds similar with that. And there's a lot that we'll have to unpack with regard to the universal principles, and even the from each according to ability and to each according to need. There's a lot of nuance that has to be done there too, because I get the general spirit of what that means, and I completely agree. But there are lots of ways that very simple general premise can be manipulated or perverted to be ableist, to be exclusionary to people that can't contribute to society. And I know that's not what the phrase means. That's not what any of this means. But right, we would have to have enough clarity. And herein lies the crux that we've been discussing, is that going forward, we need some kind of idea as to what we do and what we don't do. But we don't want these options to be determined by dogma or by idealism or by what we'd rather, right? And we right, back to where I was going. That's where we'll go. Okay. So, right, going back to the abstraction. The essential characteristics of the thing must be the people itself. the essential characteristics of the thing must be an expression or a function of the people themselves, directly, with direct control, direct access, zero alienation. Anything other is an abstraction, which is itself an identity, which is a power, which will only be concerned with its self-preservation, divorced from you, right? That's where I'm getting, right? So if the what the party is, or what the movement is, or the organization, coalition, tent, if that can be abstracted from the people, we already have a problem. Because now we have an identity. That identity will be some kind of expressive power in the actual world, and that power will seek to protect and insulate itself, to perpetuate itself. And if it's divorced from the people, it doesn't care about them. It doesn't have to care about them, and even more so, is incentivized not to. Particularly, in the same way that we've talked about, it's not that the power corrupts. It's that when you centralize the power, the centralizing of itself turns into a system of funneling power. Because that's what power does. Unless power is informed by a small group of people who are working together towards a common goal, right? Or with the understanding that they are organizing a flat structure that people can enter into or dissociate from at liberty, and have the ability to enter into and then to change and manipulate. All of those things must be the case, that individuals who are in that, whatever that organization, must have the power to associate or disassociate with full freedom, and the ability to manipulate that system to meet the needs of me and us together. I think that makes sense. Because this is really good. What you're on about, Kai Matara, is really good. And is going to really be a lot of fun to go over on stream, it looks like. Stable class is defined by its specific role, right? All right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. For sure. Oh, right. I wanted to go back and interrogate this with a little bit more scrutiny. Every power presupposes some form of human slavery. And I think it would be helpful to have the context. I'm not familiar with this author, actually, at all. It's not somebody that I've read any of. So I don't have the context for this either. So that might be one of the things that I put on my reading list next. But See, and that's... I'm not sure how this author is using power. For the division of society into higher and lower classes was one of the first conditions of its existence. And if he's talking about of the existence of power, I disagree with that. The origin of power is humans coming together to work together. Right, with no other caveats or that's it. The power is when and where people come together and combine their wills toward a common goal. That's what power is. Then into castes, orders, and classes occurring in every power structure corresponds to the inner necessity of separation of the possessors of privilege from the people. Right, and I don't disagree with the overall sentiment. Copper was this author's name. Let me go back it up some. Oh no, that's... Rocker. Rudolph Rocker.
Not
What?
war. Just peace. Forever. Forever.
Stop. Why are you doing the thing? Stop doing that thing. Okay, let me just go back here then. Fuck's sake. Okay. Yeah, well, that's neither here nor there. But okay, so that's somebody I want to look more into for sure. Work nationalism and...
Aspect is particularly emphasized by Rudolf Rocker in his work Nationalism and Culture.
Nationalism and culture. Hey, look at that. There's a PDF available. Because anarchists fucking rock. Because anarchists believe that information should be free and not behind paywalls or withheld or gatekept. Good. But that's going to be back on the burner. I'm trying to decide if I want to decide now about what we're going to do on next stream on Wednesday. But I think I'm going to leave it a little bit open. It will be more discussion about state. Because we've only just scratched the surface. And one of the things that I want to do is to go back to this distinction between these two guys' conceptions, or these two people's conception of state versus government, right? Not these two. Where did it go? These two. Right. Malatesta and Bookchin. We want to we'll want to take a look at how they treat state and how they separate it from government. I don't think that we need to spend a lot of time on it. It's not like you all don't know theory. Right. It's not like you all haven't read some of this or been exposed to some of these ideas before. But I think that there's some stuff that we need to work out. That's I'm foreseeing some problems that we'll trip over later if we haven't carefully worked through some of this together. I think is how I want to make that statement. Good. No. Where? Okay, there we go. That's back to me. Okay. 5:30. That feels like a pretty comfortable place to wrap up. I'm down for more streaming, but I got through everything that I wanted to. The video was really exactly in every way what I was hoping it was gonna be. But that's, when you have been watching a content creator for a while, you get a pretty good idea of their canter and their pacing and their strategy and how they outline. And it was really quite exactly what I expected. One thing that I think I need to be a little bit honest about is that maybe I have been looking at Lenin through rose-colored glasses. Maybe I have given Lenin more credit than they deserve with regard to their insistence that that revolutions need to be based in material conditions, because it just, to me, it seems like any kind of vanguardism is divorced from concern for the material conditions. You know what I mean? Like, it's analogous for me as an ethicist. It's analogous to having been given one major moral theory to solve all of your moral problems, given one rationalist moral framework that is now your tool for always solving all of your moral problems. That doesn't work. Utilitarianism always has problems. Deontology always has problems. Virtue ethics always has problems. Any kind of, and even virtue ethics isn't a strictly rationalist framework, and still runs into the same problems of rationality. And major moral theories do. That's why most ethicists like myself encourage people to expose themselves to many different kinds of moral theories so that they can decide for themselves, based on their situations, the kinds of decisions that this decision maker should do in those kinds of moral situations. Right? And sometimes you want to employ a utilitarian calculus, and sometimes you want to be concerned with principles and duties and deontologically speaking, and sometimes you want to factor in salient factors about the moral agents involved in the moral ethical situation, right? So care ethics, virtue ethics, postmodern ethics, all right, can be rolled all up into how we understand our relationship to the world. rather than having some kind of dogma that's always the thing that I always use all the time for solving all of my problems. That just is a mindset divorced from the material reality of your conditions. So I'll have to do some contemplating on that, and I might revisit some of the Lenin works that I've read. I'm just trying to think of how important, really necessary that is. I don't know. I'll think about it. Anyway, I think that's a good spot to walk away for now, at least. Okay, so let's find us a raid target. Oh, one more thing that I would like to take a moment and do is thank you. I mean, I thank you all an awful lot, but I don't think that it's enough yet. And I really appreciate how helpful you all are in every conceivable way. That you seek out content and you put it in the Discord for us to go over later. Thank you. I love you so much for doing that. That you show up to stream and you have thoughtful, critical pushback and insightful input. Thank you. And I don't always get to it all. Sometimes people put brilliant things in chat and I don't even read it, or don't see it until I'm watching the VOD later, or don't get to speak to it. There's tons of stuff that have been put in the Discord that I still have not even touched. Matt put a bunch of videos from Crutches and Spice in there, and we went over a few of them, but there's didn't even get to them all. But thank you for caring about this, about me, about us, about the conversations that we're trying to have. Thank you for showing up and having input. I just cannot thank you all enough. And I probably will continue to just try to, hopelessly to express my gratitude to you and how much I appreciate what you all do to me and how much you mean, but it will always be insufficient. All right. Looking for a raid target. Oh, wait. Who was that? Maybe I'll check them out later. We did them kind of recently. What? Is 27 already on? No way. All right, there we go. We're just in time for Smoko. All right, let's go right over 27. This is for those of you who are not here all of the time, this is one of my all-time favorite streamers to watch. I love David. They put on a fantastic show. The 27 Club is a good place to hang out, a good community of excellent people who who look out for each other and are self-critical, right? They are critical of each other, and David is really good at being critical of people in chat. It's a good place to learn and grow and to be with comrades. So let's go over and say hi to the 27 Club. And I always forget to do this. All right, if you've got a sub, copy this, or Matt will probably put a clever one in whenever we raid in. They usually do. So either way, that you can show your support would be appreciated. And I appreciate you all anyway. And until the next time I see you, be excellent to each other. Where'd it go? Where's my...
Come and get me. I'm ready for you.
Essential, baby. Oh yeah, you're essential. I'm talking about the grocery store clerks, cashiers, nurses, doctors, nurses' assistants, food delivery drivers, post office workers, bike delivery, train operators. You know who you are. You're getting the fuck out there and doing it. And god damn it, this time really, really sucks. But let me tell you something. You are the best thing about it. You get out there, you risk your ass so that idiots like me can order food and make this stupid bullshit. And for that, god damn it, baby. We love you. Ha!
Well, hello there. How y'all doing, folks? Good to see yous. Hope you're all good.